slow, but we can make our break a little shorter.
Okie dokie.
So
I'm Colin, and I like to do this thing, and some of you that I've known for a while might have heard this before, but I've got a question.
Wait, Colin who?
Colin Bennett, for sure. And my question is, what did one math book say to the other book?
You can count on me.
We sure got a lot of problems. Yeah. So whether it be environmental devastation and injustice, including the climate crisis, Citizens United, endless war, unemployment, skyrocketing healthcare costs, genetically modified foods, racial injustice, the war on women, the list goes on and on and on. And I think that's, we all recognize that. If it's not one of these issues or another issue that's similar, or all of these issues, that's, I think, why all of us are in this room, why we're all a member of the Green Party. And we also realize that the status quo, what Scott was just talking about, is not doing it for us. In fact, it's doing nothing but perpetuating all these problems. We're not actually making any progress addressing these things. So that's why I'm here. That's why I like to run, because not only do I believe that I can offer, hope and change, but I also believe that I can truly be an independent advocate for the people of Connecticut, and then, by extension, the people in this country. So I'm a big fan of brevity. I'm not going to say more than I need to say, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Sound good? Great. So I've lived in Eastern Connecticut for most of my life. I've lived in Ashford, up here, Salem, kind of in the middle, Old Saybrook and Westbrook down on the shoreline right next to each other. 6th grade all the way through high school. I know the district well. I've worked here, I've gone to school here, both as 6th grade through high school, and then also taking classes at Eastern. Worked all over the district in London, as well as other places. So having seen this district from one end to the other, I know the district well. I know how diverse it is, from Madison to Union, or from Mystic to Enfield. I mean, there's a lot of diversity in this district. And all of this, I'm sure you know. So, I mean, everybody's from this district, or pretty much. So let me tell you a little bit why I'm running. When I was in high school, I was on a bad path. I'll just be really honest with you. I was drinking a lot and hanging out with friends. I had absolutely no ambition or drive. I didn't even have a willingness to graduate. I was just like, screw it, like just another misguided suburban youth, if you will. But as a result of that, right about 2 years out of high school, actually exactly 2 years out of high school, I ended up with, as part of an unplanned pregnancy, which resulted in an unplanned child, my daughter Daisy, who's now the light of my life. She's not here today. I thought about bringing her, but she's about to turn 13, so this isn't exactly her scene. But anyway, my daughter Daisy was a wake-up call for me. Having a child literally turned my life around. It didn't happen overnight, but it certainly didn't it took away my excuse for just not caring anymore. You know what I mean? I now had another person directly responsible for me, so I had to actually recognize these problems that were there. I just had to admit that they were there, and then I had to do something about it. That, of course, doing something about it led me to fight for, I guess, justice broadly. I mean, I'm passionate about some things more than other things, including racial justice and environmental justice, which are very, very directly related, but also gender justice and sexual justice. So those are things that I'm passionate about, but it's the big picture that we're looking at. So for the last 10 plus years, I've been in this fight, and I can name all the things that I've been doing. Like essentially, at my entire adult life, since I've had my daughter, I've been dedicated to doing one thing or another that I think furthers this cause. Whether it's being a JP in Westbrook, whether it's being a campus or community organizer, whether it's being in the Coast Guard Reserve, responding to the BP Gulf oil spill disaster. All these things I think are leading me to this, or just continuation of this fight. And that's why I'd actually like to run for this, because it's a continuation of this fight. And I know Scott has expressed to me before that he's worried that I wouldn't necessarily get the 1% that would guarantee the ballot access for the next one. But I'm not looking at it this way. I'm looking at, all right, so this is a huge battle, and we're fighting hundreds of thousands of dollars against us. So 1% is not the goal, 5% is not the goal. The goal is actually to win, but if not winning, at least bringing these issues and making sure that people talk about the things that aren't being covered in the media. So, yeah, I know, and there's not really a tactful way to say this, but like Scott directly, so I've run for office with the Green Party since I think 2008, 2004, maybe. It's been a long time. I run for state senate 3 times. I was on the ballot for comptroller twice, just as a placeholder candidate. But just to give you kind of perspective, in the last election, 2010 election, when I was on the ballot for comptroller, I got 13,288 votes statewide. But of those, 3,653 were in the second district alone. And that was absolutely whatsoever with no campaigning at all. Like, I didn't answer one candidate questionnaire, I didn't do anything, and that was made clear to the folks in the state Green Party that I'll just be the placeholder, but I still do well enough to get, you know, a few percent of this. So if I can do that without any campaigning, like, I really feel confident that I can do super well by actually putting a lot of effort into this, which I can commit to you right now that I'll put as much effort as I possibly can and actually go out to do the best I can with as little money as possible. So that's all I've got. I hope if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Core issues?
Core issues, I guess, is environmental justice. And the reason I'll tell you why is because I understand that people are struggling. I'm struggling economically. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have clean air, if we don't have clean water, if we don't have food, all the other problems cease to exist because we just don't survive. So environmental justice is my big thing. I'm also a racial justice organizer and activist. And I believe that in our country, right now, the disparities that we see among the so-called 9% and 1%, folks of color, people of color in this district, in this country, are suffering the most. And I don't think that that's by anything but by design, where we force folks of color to suffer, to elevate folks that, you know, identify as white. So those are core issues. I mean, I'm also very, very, very much opposed to any kind of corporate dictatorship. So I totally support the overturn of Citizens United. I mean, just on a personal level, like, I do my absolute very best to not support any corporation. And I know that's difficult. I can't even get here without buying gas from a corporation or using a cell phone that's Verizon or whatever the case may be. So it's not possible to compete unless I'm going to go live in a cave. But yeah, so that's the third one. Overturning corporate dictatorship.
Oh, I was going to ask you, just from a strategic point of view, it's still a huge district. It's probably about 40% of the state area-wise. How do you propose to get your name out? I guess that's really a huge issue that Greens have without having a lot of money for media.
Sure. I mean, I guess the plans, I'm big on social media. I come from a younger generation than most of the folks in this room. So things like Twitter and Facebook, YouTube, I think that those 3 things alone can get the name out there. But then I also have a lot of experience working with the media, whether it be meeting directly with, you know, setting up interviews with by reaching out and doing things like answering the candidate questionnaires, and then also just being a presence in as many places that I could be. So things like Third Thursdays and things like that throughout the district. And so for this, I think of things in terms of semester, because right now I'll be in grad school as well, 1 night a week at Southern Connecticut State University, which is obviously not in this district, but so part-time grad school. So that'll take up some of my time, but I'm also underemployed, if you will, and essentially to pay the bills. I'm a substitute teacher in the towns of Chester, Deep River, and Essex in one school district. So with doing that during the day and then grad school, I'll still have a lot of time to be able to travel throughout the district. I mean, these roads are like essentially where I grew up.
Hi, Colin. You also play. I know it costs money, but this is time for fairs now.
Pardon me?
Time for fairs.
Right, exactly.
So I know that costs money, but maybe that can be helpful too.
Sure, absolutely.
You can join in my fairs at my booth if you'd like. I'll send you I'll Facebook you all the dates.
Great.
Because I have a table at all the fairs.
Are you going to be at the Brooklyn Fair?
Brooklyn, not in my district.
Okay, because the fellow from the Brooklyn Fair called for both of you, and they're desperate to have us there. They're willing to give it to us for practically nothing. So it's just an idea. I can set you up.
So like this weekend or this?
No,
coming
next
weekend?
weekend.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So I got the information.
Mansfield has its town festival on the Green September 23rd. So that's also an opportunity.
Awesome.
And there's, you know, it's a chance to, I think, meet some college kids perhaps.
Sure. And I do well with college kids because, I mean, that's essentially who I am. So.
Yep. One quick question.
Sure.
It seems like the job of the 2nd District Congressman or woman inevitably becomes protector of the sub-base and the representative for Electric Boat. How do you, as a Green Party candidate, plan to address that?
Oh, that's a tough one. I will be honest with you because I don't support the ground sub-base at all. I think it should be shut down. I mean, I thought it was a shame when it was on that whatever rack, and then Lieberman managed to save it. Really, our economy in Connecticut historically is largely built on warfare and weapons of war, which has been something that we need to recognize historically. It's like we got to where we got, but we got to where we got because of the fact that we're in these endless cycles of wars where the U.S. is responsible for, millions upon millions of deaths in developing countries right to this day. So I guess my proposal would be to, and this is kind of pie in the sky, I'll admit, but my proposal would be to shut down that nuclear sub-base there, at least as a start, clean it up, and then turn it into a world-class research university focusing on maritime education. I mean, it's in a perfect location for that. I mean, I've thought a lot about it, like the fact that Long Island Sound is the northernmost range of a lot of maritime species, but it's also the southernmost species. So, I mean, the facility's already there. They already house thousands of people, so to clean it up and make it a world-class university, I think is totally doable. So this idea of a just transition, not just putting all these folks out of a job, but then having more opportunities to replace them.
I just want to comment. I think that's great because I've been fighting for diversification there and also at Electric Boat through 2 congressional runs. And had we done that, if part of the subbase had been used for other functions, then it wouldn't be an all or none situation with the BRAC closure. And the BRAC closure is, I would say, inevitable. The only thing that saved the subbase was the fact that it's so badly contaminated.
Sure.
Right. I was part of the DEP team that evaluated the contamination. We told the Navy flat out, the U.S. government, if you're going to get out of here, you're going to have to clean it up first. And that's why the BRAC closure didn't happen, because of the cost of cleanup. But I would really push the diversification, make it clear that people can be inserted into other jobs, there can be a transition to other jobs, infrastructure, and I think the idea of a maritime university is a great one as well, because it's an old facility in terms of its infrastructure, but it wouldn't take that much to use portions of it for other types of operations. And what's going to happen, they're going to be outcompeted, they already are, by Newport News and Georgia. That's where the trains go, and then the subs are going behind it.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm fully aware of the contamination there. That's why, like, very specific. But cleaning up these massive, whatever the case may be, is going to create jobs in and of itself. It's going to be a long process, but I think at least with a goal in mind, that it's something that's doable. Sure.
I just want to pick up on what Scott was talking about with maybe immediately we have more transferable skills for the people who are based. We're going to be out of work. Maybe we can use them for energy sources or other types of sources, not just infrastructure, but I don't have a great insight into that. Maybe you guys do.
It would be a great place for wind-generated electricity. I've worked at Electric Boat, and I've worked at the subbase, and the wind really rips up the Thames River.
Yeah, well, sure.
And it would be ideal for that type of situation, and building those types of structures for domestic and commercial use as well.
I was going to ask, can we start the cleanup now? Why do we have to wait for the base to close?
Theoretically, but where's any business for that?
It's a contaminated site.
Sure.
Well,
I don't know, so that's why it's a question. Is that
you're right, and there should have been actions against the Navy. I was involved in some with transformers that leaked PCBs into the Thames River. At that time, I was given a lot of authority at DEP and pretty much no leash at all. And I wrote letters to then Weicker and Dodd, who were in office, and said, listen, this is a problem. These are leaking PCB transformers. The federal government and the state has written notices of violation. We're in the consent order mode now. They got to go. We had probably the proudest moment in the 27 years I worked for DEP. We had a big meeting. This was early in DEP's history when everybody loved environmentalists, just about everybody. And the Navy brass were there with all of their fruit salad on a big table, and I was there with the director of my unit. And we had Weicker's letter, and Dodd's letter supporting our enforcement action to get the leaking transformers off the piers. And we had the place filled, standing room only, with people from the Groton area who were cheering us. And then Deputy Commissioner John Anderson got up and said, I want you to understand that we're happy that the Navy's here, but you're guests in the state of Connecticut. And the place erupted in applause. And I had the hair going up in the back of my neck. I was so proud to be part of that effort and to have started it. And it can be done, and it takes people at the state level and federal level to stand up to the U.S. Navy, basically, to say, all right, let's not wait until BRAC closes this, let's clean up. And most of it's under two places, the ball fields, so they can go without some softball as that's happening. And then there are some lines that go down to the lower base. The lower base is heavily contaminated with lead from World War II yet, when they took the batteries and just dumped them in the lead contamination.
So this is a threat to New York Island Sound right now?
It's an ongoing contamination issue. I mean, that's all seeping. Yeah, that's all seeping into the Thames River.
Make it part of the campaign issue. Clean up the basin now.
Good idea.
Does EB have similar problems?
EB has similar problems, yes, but they have rectified a lot of their problems. But certainly anybody who's got an industry on the riverfront is going to be a source of contamination. Pfizer's historically, all of them along the Thames River.
I have another out of the blue to you issue. University of Connecticut just got $180 million promised from the governor and the Democratic legislature to put a tech park up at the university. The university has no water. They've run out of water. They were back on water alert again this summer. They had encouraging everybody to use paper plates. But in the meantime, they've built 170 new apartments, and they're about to start phase 2 with another couple hundred apartments. So they're adding infrastructure, knowing they have no water because they don't have to follow any state laws. Sure. They're exempt from the state laws. So first of all, we need somebody to make them follow the state laws, which is probably not your job. I think that's the state legislature. But just in terms of smart growth, the university should stop expanding in stores. It should start expanding in places like New London and Groton. Pfizer has 100 million square foot of empty lab space. A million square feet of empty lab space. UConn is looking to build 1 million square feet of lab space in the tech park. Why isn't UConn expanding in the population centers of this state and near the jobs, or create jobs in those areas, as opposed to here where there's really very little unemployment except in Wyndham? The state of Connecticut put $20 million into fixing up an old mill in Wyndham for UConn to use, but UConn doesn't want to come down there.
I think on top of that issue, and I'm trying to figure out how it would fit into your campaign, what's happening in Groton.
Because it's almost like maybe that's a state level issue. So it might not.
Well, what's happening with Groton and Pfizer is that Pfizer wants to demolish the buildings to reduce their tax rate. And then now it brings up a separate issue about how taxes are levied and what's funded. And it will be devastating for Groton to lose that tax base because they've been able to really run very, very easily with the tax base they have with EB as well as Pfizer paying a pretty significant amount of money to the town and to the city of Groton. And the decision of Pfizer to tear down buildings, I was an employee for Pfizer, I worked in the buildings that they're talking about tearing down. There is absolutely no reason those buildings need to be torn down. They, some of them are 50 years old, but they've been renovated. They're not 50-year-old labs, they're 15-year-old labs. Sure. That's a huge issue, and I don't know how that fits into a congressional debate, but local issues always come up in national politics.
Land value tax reform, that's something the Green Party's been fighting for. It wouldn't matter if you have a building on the property or not, you'd be taxed the same.
Right. It would cost the same.
I know Ron and Bob are going to jump in there, but I beat them to the punch. But land value tax reform is something we've been fighting for.
Yes.
It's really gotten some impetus in the New London area, and we need to expand that into the second district and make that a big issue.
But it's still local issue, it's not a federal issue.
Right,
That's
but
correct, but that doesn't mean you can't step into federal, local issues. If you're running for Congress, it's much easier to do that as opposed to the opposite. If you're running for a local and then saying, well, I'm against the wars in Iraq, they're going to say, well, you know, we want you for city council. But if you're running for Congress, you can step into these local
I mean,
issues.
putting the pressure on Pfizer to not do this, I mean, I think it's a bit of a bluff at this point, but to put the pressure on them and to really raise the issue, it's as important as talking about sub-base closure and what's going to be done with that facility. I mean, Pfizer in Groton, its days are numbered. I can tell you that from being an employee there, that it's not going to last much longer. They ballooned, they opened up into New London, they've left New London now. That highlights whole issues with tax abatements and corporate welfare. But I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity in Groton to look at those types of issues, not just EB and the sub-base, but also Pfizer as, you know, really not being good corporate neighbors.
Sure. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that, and I could go on and on and on about, and this isn't popular, so this is kind of like off the record, but I couldn't agree more, or I'd probably take it even further, that I don't think UConn should be in stores except for its vet school and its ag school, which I know is not popular around here, but the fact of the matter is UConn is in Hartford. It would totally revitalize one of the poorest cities in the country. It would change the dynamic of our entire state by putting one of the best public universities in New England, held the country, in the city, transforming the city, it would just literally lift our state to a whole other level. But that's like end game strategy, long term, decades down the road. But just still like building in, supporting, you know, high density urban areas with different departments and different programs and different schools, I think is a great idea.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Is there a way of like further educated?
In those buildings.